down 72% in 2022. Is UiPath stock a buy for 2023? I'm going to answer that question in this video, so stay tuned. First thing I want to show you guys is UiPath's revenue growth quarterly basis going back till early 2021. And what you see here is a steadily declining, decelerating revenue growth from a peak of over 60% down to just 19% in its most recent quarter. And given the headwinds in enterprise spending going forward, I suspect this revenue growth could be pressured for the next several quarters. And keep this in mind when we're talking about valuation in the last slide in this video. The next thing I want to show you is its cash flow from operations, and like with its revenue growth, it's showing a steadily downward trend, negative 27 million in its most recent quarter, but more worrisome is just the steady downward trend declining as the quarters go by. Despite the fact that revenue is growing on the top line, cash flow from operations keeps falling. The next thing I want to look at here is UiPath's earnings per share, and the company is consistently losing money on the bottom line. But at least the good thing to note here with earnings per share is that I don't see a steadily downward trend like we saw in cash flow from operations, right? Earnings per share has been relatively flat. If we were to draw a line from the beginning of this chart to the end, there isn't much of a steady decline. So as revenue is growing, the earnings per share in relation to revenue is demonstrating some economies in scale, which is good news for investors. I would like to see more demonstration of economies in scale, but at least I'm beginning to see hints of it in this metric where I didn't see in any of the other metrics I was considering when I was researching this stock to do this video. Finally, I want to look at UiPath's valuation because any stock could be a buy at the right price. And UiPath certainly has seen its valuation decline. It used to trade at a price to sales ratio over 60. I would argue it should never have gotten that high, but that's not for me to say. Right now it's trading at a price to sales ratio of just 6.266. At its lowest level it has traded for going all the way back to that time. Still, I wouldn't say the stock is cheap. When I'm looking at a company selling at a price to sales ratio of 6, I want to see accelerating revenue growth. I want to see economies in scale in terms of operating margin, in terms of cash flow from operations. And I'm not seeing that from UiPath, right? We saw decelerating revenue growth. We saw falling cash flow from operations. We saw, okay, earnings per share was flat. It wasn't decelerating or falling, but that was the only one. Everything else was decelerating or falling. And then when we consider that enterprises are pulling back spending in right now and going into 2023, as their stock prices have fallen, as investors are paying attention to profitability more closely, enterprises are reducing spending, which is not going to be good news for UiPath going into 2023. So for all of those reasons, I don't want to pay a price to sales ratio at 6.2 for a company heading with this kind of near-term prospects. Now zooming out, of course, UiPath has really good long-term prospects. The industry that it operates in is expected to grow at a 30% compound annual growth rate over the next decade. It saves companies a lot of money using its services, so companies would be wise to use UiPath services, but that's more of a long-term investment for enterprises, and they spend a lot of money up front and they save a little bit of money every quarter for several years. And that's something that they can just kind of delay or postpone when they're facing uncertain environment like they're facing right now. So 2023, I don't expect to be a good year for UiPath stock. And for that reason, I would not recommend investors buy UiPath stock for 2023. All right, so that's all I've got for this video. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.